All right. Well, Jim, I think I'm going to let you get started. I want to say thank you to everybody for being patient and getting the link at the literal last second. But I'm just going to, Jim, I'm going to let you just jump in and, you know, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat and I can stop and we'll, if that's cool with you, Jim. And
yeah, absolutely. In fact, you can feel free to just interrupt me and ask it, because if I go into the chat, Jaws is going to start going nuts reading it. So,
all right.
yeah, well, thanks for having me, Jill. It's good to be here to talk about digital accessibility and the importance of it. I think, you know, we've had some movement in that direction over the last couple of years. The university is really starting to pay attention to this a little bit more. You know, we had a grassroots campaign that was put together to develop a digital accessibility policy, and now we indicate that everything that was new post September 1st, 2021 needs to comply with WCAG 2.1 AA standards and be accessible for everybody. We have time to go back to the historical stuff and fix that, but anything new going forward, anything you create now should meet those accessibility standards. What I kind of want to do today is twofold. I want to talk about 7 key skills that we can start with to make sure that our sites are accessible. Oh, also, I should point out, this is more important than, well, it's always important. It's important because it's the right thing to do. But the other component of this is now we've got complaints or lawsuits being filed, not against us yet. We've managed to dodge these forever, but large class lawsuits against higher education institutions because of accessibility. I think not that long ago, Harvard, Brown, a couple other, I think there were 18 in total, but there was no real like pattern of where they were all sued for having inaccessible athletics sites. So we've been in contact with athletics here because the same company that runs the websites for all of them runs ours. And we started talking about this kind of stuff with them as well. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and the Office of Civil Rights indicated that they're going to start. I'm going to close my email so you don't hear all of that popping up. I thought I did already. Sorry. At this conference, they indicate the Office of Civil Rights is going to start preemptively taking a look at people's digital space and running these audits and telling them, hey, we got something, you got something. It's not as nice as, hey, you got something you need to fix. Then it becomes a bigger issue where there's timelines we got to get after it and whatnot as well. So it's pretty critical to be looking at this kind of thing right now. Anyway, what I'm going to do first is I'll name these 7 skills that I think people should be looking at, and then I'm going to dive into the JAWS demo so you can hear what somebody who uses a screen reader, how they access a website. Because I don't have a full license, it's running in 40-minute mode. So I'm 6 minutes into that running right now. So if you have questions or want to hear anything, let me know and we can show you those things. The 7 things that we need to focus on, like the simple low-hanging fruit stuff, are 1, making sure that we've got headings on our site. That is for navigation purposes, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. 2, make sure that all of our images have alternative text that provide a description of what we are trying to portray with that image on our site. 3, we want to make sure that links don't hyperlinks, or we don't list the whole URL for links, and hyperlinks don't say click here, more info, that kind of thing. They have meaningful text with them, and I'll show you why that's important with JAWS in a second as well. 4, we want to make sure that our tables have header rows and columns with them, and that those cells are labeled properly. We'll come back to all this stuff too. 5, we want to make sure that our color contrast is appropriate. 6, we want to make sure that we use lists when we are bulleting things. And 7, we want to make sure that videos have captions and audio files have transcripts. So with that, those things in mind, let me show you how JAWS works on a website. And again, if anybody has questions, you can feel free to stop. So we are in right now The AccessibleNU website. I just want to show you.
Leaving menus. AccessibleNU dash Northwestern.
You can hear
University dash Google Chrome.
kind of what a
AccessibleNU
screen
dash
reader is
Northwestern
reading.
University. AccessibleNU
So if I
dash
start
Northwestern
tabbing
University.
through
Name,
this,
page, link, skip the main content. Northwestern University.
you'll see
link.
it's
Northwestern
stopping on any
University.
link, any image.
Student affairs, global link, global link, meet
And
download,
our
save,
sites are
multi-
pretty good
academic
here because
resources,
you see it pops up the,
heading level 1 link visit.
there's a heading level 1. You heard it's a heading level 1, so it's a heading.
Search region, search.
There's our search. It goes
Main
through all that.
navigation menu, navigation region.
When we go
Link,
here, you can
icon,
see.
about a click.
I'm talking over this and I shouldn't be. When I tab to this, listen, what's going to happen is I'll tab to the next one and you'll hear it's a drop down menu. It tells you that's what it is. And it tells you how to navigate through that. So we have access to all that stuff.
Navigation.
Well, I got to get all the way through it.
Appeal students link. Navigation submenu list with 1 items list.
So
with 8
as we
items.
tab
Students
through, it
overview
tells
link.
us that there's a sub menu and how many options there are in there. So this is how somebody who can't see this is navigating this. They're listening to the entire thing.
Documentation, reasonable accommodation, housing and meal plans link.
Headings are important because pretty much no one ever, I'm going to go to a different page here real quick. I'm going to go to the faculty overview.
Navigation submenu list.
We talked about
item,
headings.
with 5 items. Faculty overview link. Faculty colon.
Headings being something you want to have in there. Headings are helpful to break up your page, but also how many of you go to a page and read the entire page? Typically you're skimming looking for what those key points are on the page that you need to get to. A screen reader user can't do that. They can't see what's on the page. So they're going to want to use the headings to find out what's on that page and where they want to listen. So a screen reader user, they come to a page and they can start hitting the H button and it's going to go scroll through all the headings for them. So if I hit H, you'll hear
accessibility syllabus statement heading level 3.
It's a heading level 3. It's a syllabus statement. So I know that's probably a, and so if it's a heading level 3, I think I missed one. If I hit shift in H,
faculty heading level 2.
It'll go back up there. So faculty heading level 2. So I know, okay, faculty, that's the key thing. A sub menu would be the next, or a subsection would be the next thing.
Accessibility
syllabus statement.
Testing accommodations heading level 3.
Testing accommodations.
By professor / heading level 4.
Exams proctored by professors. That's what I want to listen to. Now I can hit the down key and it'll start going through the text within that.
AccessibleNU asks the new proctor for more than 3 students with a heading level 4 exams proctored by professor /
See, that's kind of, that right there is why the heading piece is important, right? If you have your headings structured properly, if you're using headings, I just skipped over 3 sections of text here that wasn't relevant to what I was looking for. But you and I can see that, screen reader users can't. So we need to use those those formatted headings so that they can scroll through and listen to those things.
Jim, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Or just point something out? Don't the screen reader, like you said, you have it set at 40 seconds or something like that, but don't they normally go like even faster than that?
Oh, so what I have it set at right now is something that we can listen to. Generally, a screen reader user is going to listen to this at like 600 words per minute. So they are going super fast. They can hear, they can process that quickly. And the reason the voice is the way it is, you can hear it is very robotic, is because that's easier for somebody to listen to at really high rates of speed than a more natural sounding voice. So even though there are more natural sounding voices out there, it's because of the speed people listen to this at that they utilize that. So I found this other site that I want to show you. I can go through ours and show you things on here, but I'd rather show you a site that was designed inaccessibly on purpose. So you can see where some of these issues, where we might run into some of these issues.
Before Accessible University demo site
so we are on this, and the first thing I'm going to do is tab through this and show you the difference between kind of what our site looked like and what you get in a site that's inaccessible.
Search
and why we want to avoid it.
Address, share, edit, version, navigation, region, lit after version with thick images /8 million.
Okay, so here's where I want to go. 5 items.
Home link.
So we had those same links on our page, right? And when we got to them, there was a drop down and it told us it was a list. If we don't set this up the right way,
about link.
This tells us it's about. If you're listening to that, you think it's just about. You don't see that there's a drop down arrow. You don't know that there's a list.
Academics link.
You just think it's academics. You don't have access to whatever this whole list is. And I don't know how many. So there's 4 things in there that you're not hearing when this isn't designed properly that way. Now with headings here, you can see they have something they're using as headings, right? Welcome, bienvenido, can you spot barriers? Those are all headings. They've broken this up visually, but they didn't tag this properly. So if I'm a screen reader user, one of the things I can do is I can hit, let me see it. If I hit insert function F6 on my screen, you're going to see I get a list of the headings that pop up. So before I just went through it hitting H on my screen. This gives me a list of all the headings on the page. The way they tag this, we only have 4 headings here. December 1, a great holiday event, December 31st, and New Year's Eve party. And they're all mangled as like it's a heading level 6, a heading level 5. They should all be set up like an outline. But you don't see welcome, can you spot barriers? You don't see any of that on there. So if somebody's going to listen to this page, they're going to have to go through and listen to the whole thing to find any of that information because they didn't use headings properly on this. Now, when I pull this up, I don't know what the heck this means. December 1, a great holiday event. I mean, I can go down to that and go, okay, that sounds interesting, and hit enter, and it'll take me over there. And that's this thing over here. So this is the only place they've used headings on this. So if I'm just pulling up a list of headings and scrolling through it, I miss all of this. That's why it's important to utilize those headings and also with the structure so that you know what is related, like what's a subsection related to a previous section and whatnot. So I mentioned also like links being important, right? And making sure that you have meaningful text in your links. Here's why. Again, if I hit insert function and F7, it's going to pull up a list of the links that are on this page for me so that I can navigate through there and maybe see if there's a link that I think is helpful and I can go right to that. So if it's not done properly, I could do, let's see what I say, insert function F7, and here's my list of links. So now I've got
version with problems unavailable 1 of 20 after version with fixes.
Okay, that's fine.
Images /8,670,000.
That's not helpful at all because you know what does that even mean? I can listen to that and it's not gonna be helpful. These are fine, but then I get down here.
13 of 27.
Click here. That tells me nothing.
Click here. 14 of 20. Click here. 15 of 27.
There's 3 click here's in a row. I guarantee you they don't go to the same place. But me as a screen reader user going through this list, I have no idea where that's going to take me. I don't know if that's something that I need to go to or if that's something I should be going to or what that's even attached to in the text. That's a big no to use click. That's why using click here just doesn't really, it doesn't work. It's an inaccessible tactic if we're using that as a hyperlink.
Jim, should we be able to see the text, the list that you're referring to?
Oh, are you not be able to see the list?
No, we just see the web page.
Oh, well, thanks for calling me out on that. Let's see if I can fix that.
Select a window or an application screen. Share screen button.
All right, let me do that again.
Meeting control.
Function, insert function F7. Oh, wait, I didn't get the function on it. Insert function
F7.
Hold on.
Leaving menus before Accessible University links list
Okay,
dialog.
so you see that list now? That's, can you guys see it now? Okay,
Yes.
Sorry about that.
27. To move to items, use the arrow
So
key.
again, this is what, but a user is not going to see this either, right? A screen reader user, they just know that there's a list there and it's just pulled out the list of links so they can go through that quickly and kind of scan through and see if it's something that there's something there they want to go to. So this is where I was. We've got 3 in a row that are click here. Based on that list, I have no idea where that is on the page. I don't know what it's associated with.
A great holiday event, 16, New Year's Eve party.
New Year's Eve party is pretty
27.
clear. If I want to go find out about the New Year's Eve party, I know what I should be doing there.
FB, 18 of 27.
I guess I can assume that's Facebook, but I don't necessarily know that that's the case.
TW, 19 of 27. Twitter, 22 of 27.
And then I've got 3 identical links to Twitter and a TW. So now if I'm listening to this, I'm probably a little confused as to, you know, what's happening here and what is what and where I need to go with these things. So I mean, I just wanted to pull this up basically as an image of why click here is a problem. Any questions about that with links and what readers hear or how that's used?
I wanted to throw in there also that when you are submitting things for paw print and things that are going to be online or in an email, all these same things apply. So, you know, when I'm going through and putting your paw print submissions in, I'm going through and making sure all the links are linked properly and described properly, and headings are used, lists are being used, all those kinds of things. So just keep those in mind when you're also putting those submissions in.
So another thing that I mentioned was images, right? So let's say a screen reader user comes to this page. There's clearly a picture here that's meant to indicate something. What we have to do is describe what that image is in the alternative text for that picture, so that somebody that's using a screen reader knows. We don't have to go into this and say, for example, we don't have to say a church with 6 stained glass windows of various colors and a couple people on the altar with 17 poinsettias singing. That's way too much information. We also don't want to say church. That's not enough information. There's a couple clearly this is about the brass ensemble, right? So we want to indicate maybe brass ensemble playing in a church. That would be what this picture is trying to get across. And so that's how we want to put that alt text in. But to give you an example of what we don't want to do, again, screen reader users, they're going to start navigating through this. It gets to an image, it's going to say image, and then it's going to give them what the alt text is so that they know what's going on. I'm not going to go through and tab through this so you hear that, but I'm going to pull up again a list of images so you can get an idea of kind of what they've written as poor alternative text here. So give me 1 second. Let's see, Control Insert G. Control Insert G pulls up my list of images.
8,607,509-L-O-G-O-before 1 of 7.
So first of all, that's not descriptive at all. B, it's a title name. C, it's really hard to listen to that because of the way it reads it. We didn't have that in this page, but if you have a URL that you put in there, just the URL, that's exactly how a URL is written or is read by a screen reader. And that's why that's a no-no as well. That's why you want to have those hyperlinked, because it can be really hard to listen. And those are usually a lot longer too. So they can be really hard to listen to 8673590 - whatever. But that doesn't tell us anything. This doesn't tell us anything either.
8,675,300 horizontal line graphic 3 of 7.
So this is going a little too far. Horizontal line graphic refers to these things right here. Those are images that have been put. So there's 2 things we need to do with images. One, we need to describe them to the level of what they're trying to get across in the description. 2, if you put in something like these lines as images, those are considered decorative. They don't add anything to the user experience except separating these things. And there's already separating things built in for somebody with a screen reader. So if you put something in that has no real descriptive value to your site or your document or whatever you happen to be creating, and there, when you go to the alt text area, there's an option to mark that as decorative text. So those are decorative images. So those 2 things should actually be marked as decorative images, because we don't need to have those read. It's kind of a waste of time for a screen reader to go through and read decorative line or whatever it might be. We also don't want to just leave it with the title name. That's always a no-no in our alt text. We saw what happens with those other images when we left it with a title name. We never want to do that. You also don't have to say image of, picture of, any of those kind of things, because as a screen reader goes through that, it'll indicate image, and then it'll read your alt text. So you don't need to say image of whatever, you just need to make sure you're describing that properly.
It's also best practice to your images that we're giving you from SAM. Like if we shoot an event for you or headshots or whatever it is, we're trying to give you an image that the file name is descriptive in that. Not to take away from doing the alt text, you need to do that too, but I think it's best practice to make sure that those images are named. And so if you do have your own images that you're uploading or a student sent to you, if it's IMG 9702, we want to change that and rename that file. So that's just a good thing to mention. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on, Jim, and you can, because this happens a lot, is graphics. So if Sam creates a graphic for you, for your social media, and it has, all the text about when it is and all that kind of stuff in the graphic, that being used as an image is not accessible.
Right. We don't ever want to use a graphic to display the text that people need to use or need to read. You want to use that text should be in a HTML or Word or whatever format that is readable by this, because a screen reader is not going to be able to go into an image. It's going to see an image. It's not going to be able to read that text in there. You have to write out all that text in an alt text area. And then that becomes a little cumbersome because nobody's got the navigational ability within the alt text description. The alt text is supposed to be fairly short, concise, and descriptive, not, hey, I got a paragraph of text in this image, I'm just going to dump it into the alt text tag and have somebody listen to that there. So yeah, good point, Joe. So I want to show you another thing that's not great, or that is often problematic, and that's tables. So this table is it's not designed very well. There's a lot here. It should be two separate tables. It should be a this year and a last year. When you start putting double levels of headers in there, it becomes difficult for screen reader users to figure out what's going on. So here we've got the column headers are last year, this year, and then all these, well, I assume they're classes. I don't know I know what they are because I've seen the after, but they're classes that they're looking at here. But regardless, this is not a great designed table, but they haven't set it up on the back end where they've labeled header rows and header columns. And so when a screen reader user listens to this, it becomes problematic. And I want to show you why that's the case here. So let me just grab this table with the screen reader. So screen reader user can come to a page and they can look for tables by hitting a certain keystroke to find out if there are tables there. So you would go insert Control T.
Select the table dialog.
And I'll pull up the table.
Columns and 5 rows. Column 1, row 1.
I hear I'm in the table. So now as a screen reader user, I actually have to take it to the table controls. So I have to go insert space. Oop.
Space.
And then I have to hit T.
Table layer.
So now I'm in the table layer. So now I can go through kind of my different cells. So you can hear what this sounds like as a screen reader user if I go through this.
Blank, row 2.
So row 2 is blank.
CS, column 2.
So now I know I'm in column 2 and it says CS. So let's go down one.
84, row 3.
So it says I'm in row 3 and 84. That means nothing to me because I don't necessarily know what row 3 is at this point.
Total, column 1.
Okay, so no total. Now if I go left, it's total, so I can go back.
84, column 2.
So column 2, okay, it's 84, but now what was the header at column 2? I don't really remember. Now I know I'm in total.
126, column 3.
So I'm in column 3. I have no idea what the header for column 3 is. So this is just not usable at this point. This is what makes this inaccessible is, we can go
84, row 4,
around this table and we're just,
column 4.
okay, great. I got a bunch of numbers and I know the columns. So if I have to go all the way back out and I don't really know how long this is either. So, if I get way down into the other end, then I got to go all the way back to try and remember what that column header was, or I just have to be good at remembering it and make sure I'm hitting the right pages. So that is not a great, that's an example of a table that's developed poorly.
A great holiday event heading level 5.
Another thing that you're going to see here, this is set up as an inaccessible carousel. So when we went over this, it didn't indicate that there was, a next slide. It didn't indicate that these were links. So the screen reader user misses whatever those two things are that are coming up. You can see within here, you've got poor color contrast on these links also, like this gray on white is going to be something not for that a screen reader user is going to struggle with, but a sighted person that anybody could struggle with that. We need to have good color contrast as well. Here's where our click here's are. So to see a list of all known issues, click here. That would be much better if the text read something like, there are 18 known accessibility issues on this page, and you hyperlinked known accessibility issues. That would tell us where that's going, and we'd have an idea as a screen reader user where that's going. So let me show you the after and how this should look, how this works well.
Version navigation region list with 2 items. After version with fixes link. After dash accessible skip to main.
If I start tabbing through this,
navigation out button menu, press space to activate the menu, then navigate with arrow keys.
So we know there's a menu here. It said press space to navigate this because the way that it's been designed. This is not something that content users typically are doing, so I'm not going to go into that, but you can hear that there's a little bit of a difference there. Let's check our headings and see what our headings look like now. So if I did insert function F6.
Heading list dialog. Headings list view. Accessible University.
Here we go.
(1 of 13). To move to items, use the arrow.
Now I've got headings that are helpful. I can hear.
News: 2 of 13.
Okay, I don't need news.
Accessible University Brass Ensemble: 3.
I don't really care about that. I want to go to welcome.
Enter.
I'll hit enter. That'll take me here.
List with 4 items. News link.
Jumped out of that.
News heading. Accessible University welcome. Heading level 2. Accessible University left parent AU right parent is a link fictional link university, and this is its fictional homepage. This page is designed to link fictional.
So there we go. So I can navigate right to welcome and I can listen from there. So because we're using those headings properly here, now this is much more usable. Let's take a look at our list of links and see how that looks. Let's say, what was that? It was can insert function F7.
Links list dialog. Links list view.
Okay.
Fictional 12 of 25.
So I
move the items, use the arrow keys.
Still think that there's something wrong here. I think this fictional and university are the same link, but they should be together. They should have listed that together. They didn't.
Problems. 14. List of issues. 15. An accessible version. A great holiday event. New Year's Eve. Visit us on Facebook. 9. Visit us on Twitter.
So they cleaned up all that. Like we had 3 Twitters in a row and a TW. They cleaned that up and they indicated what was going on there.
Contact us. Direct Creative Commons.
We've got it. They got rid of all those click here's. I think it's inaccessible version is where the click here was before, and now they've cleaned that up. So I think they could still do a little bit better job of kind of describing where some of these things go, but this is much more usable than the previous page where we had click here, click here, click here, TW, Twitter, and it didn't really tell us anything on where to go. So that's a key thing that any content creator can be doing, is making sure that those links are meaningful and go in the right place. Let's take a look at images on this and what that looks like. Control insert G.
Select the graphic dialog. List 1, list view. Accessible University home.
Okay, so this is much better.
Items, use the arrow key.
So instead of having that title of whatever that image was, now we've got
Brass Band Ensemble performing in University Chapel. 2 of 7.
Cool. I know what that is now. I know why that image is there. I know what that is. I think this sign down at the bottom was another one that had an image file. Now we've got
that says road closed, which presents a barrier to using the road. 3 of 7.
I get what's that image is trying to portray there. So that's a much better example and much more helpful to a screen reader user as we go through this. So I've got about 5 minutes left of JAWS. If there's anything anybody wants to see. Also, I cannot promise you that I know how to do it. To use JAWS effectively, there are pages and pages of keyboard shortcuts that you get trained on. So you kind of zero in on the things that you need to do to be able to access these. And some of what I'm showing you is just some of the very basics with using this to go through it. There's ways that users can go through it more quickly, but this is getting at kind of those core. Well, here we go. 6 minutes. I got 6 minutes left of JAWS. Is there anything else anybody wanted to see or any questions anybody had related to JAWS? Otherwise, we can continue talking accessibility, and I've got some PowerPoint slides I want to point to as well.
And we are recording this, just so everybody knows. I'll be putting the recording up on the mug site as well as in the snapshot.
Liza had a good question. Is there a well-designed table? Like, is that?
Oh,
something
yes,
we'll be able to
absolutely.
see
Yep,
that?
I want to show you that. Okay, so this looks better here, right? You see that this we didn't just use abbreviations, we wrote things out, we put it in last year versus this year. Let me show you what this sounds like now, that when they added header rows and columns to this, so that we're able to use that more effectively. Give me 1 second. I gotta go insert, Control T.
Select the table diagram.
We'll select that one. Insert space. T.
Table layer.
Okay, so now when I go into this,
Total row 2.
so total, we heard total row 2. Now if I go here,
Computer science 84 column 2.
tells us computer science. We know we're in row 2. And then if I keep moving to the right,
English 126.
it
column 3.
reads the upper level heading for the column. So we know now, we know what the column is. We know we're in the total row.
Economics 43 column 4.
And it's much more usable in this case. Now if I go down from here, we know we're in the econ column because it told us we were in that. So now if I go down, what's changing is the row. So it's going to read
Male 73%.
the row
3.
header, and then it's going to give me the number in there. With tables, we want to do our best to keep these simple. And again, making sure we're adding header rows and columns is key, because that allows us to be able to navigate this. This is something that somebody could navigate
Percent female 27%.
just by listening to this.
English 16%.
And we know
Column
we're in
3.
percent female, so that's why it's reading. We've changed the column, not the row, so it's reading the column header there. Thank you, Liza. I meant to show you that, so I appreciate you calling that out.
There's a question also from Taylor regarding using lists, not bullets, and what is the difference?
Okay, so let me show you. I'm going to take you back to our page here.
Faculty accessible new
And we're gonna
Northwestern
find a list
University.
here.
Heading level 4 exam. Not in the table.
Let me see. Let me go back to our
Banner region.
Main
AccessibleNU
page.
heading level 1 link visited. AccessibleNU heading level 2 AccessibleNU committed to providing. Heading level 4 students to be considered registered with AccessibleNU and be eligible for accommodations. All 3 of the following steps must be completed. List of 3 items. 1. Complete AccessibleNU's visited link online application.
So when you're doing that, they tell you it's a list. If you're just using bullets, it doesn't indicate that. And it's going to read like, it may or may not read the bullet. The bullet's probably going to be an image. And so it's going to say, image, bullet point, dot, whatever. It's going to be more difficult to read. By using a list, it tells you, okay, these 3 things go together. These next 3 things go together. And it's going to give you, here's list item 1. Where to go? I'm
Online
running out of
application
time.
visited link. 2. Review our disability.
So now we know it goes to
documentation
2.
guidelines and submit
We know we're in
appropriate
kind of a
documentation.
process for 3 things that go together when we use those
3.
lists.
Meet with an AccessibleNU staff member.
It's
for
much
listing
easier to
appointment and
navigate that way.
documentation.
It's much easier to kind of keep those things together. And I don't have a example of a bad list of using bullets in here, but oftentimes if you're putting your custom bullet points in, they're probably images. If you're not grouping them as a list, then these things aren't grouped, and it's harder for the reader to understand that those things go together.
Jim, there's the bulleted list under faculty in that box next.
Yeah.
The next box over. I'm just curious, like, how does that read?
Faculty heading level 4. AccessibleNU is your ally in environment for all students to attend. List of 3 items.
So because of the way we coded this in here, right, we use the list option. It could be bullet points. It could be numbers, it could be bullet points, but we're using in the content editor.
JAWS dialog. OK button to activate. Press space bar.
Okay, we got 1 minute left, so we're done with JAWS. Sorry, guys.
This box closed. JAWS dialog. AccessibleNU dash.
So because we use the bullet point item in the content editor, it's recognized as a list. We could use either the 1, 2, 3 or the bullet points to do that. And then either way, it's telling us list of X number of items, and we know the next three things when they say bullets are part of that list. If we were to just put a dash in there or instead of a bullet point and not use that content editor component that's a list, it'd be a lot harder to for a user to know that those things are grouped together and they go together.
Yeah, and one note on that, like if you copy and paste something, even if you hit the paste as text and you pop it into your content window, if you have bullet points in there, the bullet points are just going to have little dashes or something. So you have to reformat those bullet points and do them in the editor, like Jim said. But that's the one thing that you definitely have to do with bullet points in Cascade to make them accessible for the screen reader.
What other questions do people have based on that screen reader? Because I have a few PowerPoint slides on each of those skills that I'll go through as well. But did anybody have any questions based on what they just kind of heard from that screen reader?
I just wanted to confirm, sorry, I'm muted because I'm still eating some lunch. I just wanted to confirm again, so you kind of talked about this, that as long as we are using the structure built into Cascade, we're going to be covered under most of these accessibility features. So I'm thinking like the tables and stuff, like I've only ever created a table by using the feature in the content editor. So
If you use that feature, and here's the other thing with tables. So two things with tables that we didn't touch on. Tables should only be used for presenting data. It should not be used for formatting things on a page, because then again, if you're just putting it there so that you can have one column of text here, one column of text here, and it's not like you're not using the table to present that data, it's going to be hard for a screen reader to use or to know that text is there. It's going to be hidden within that table. They're going to hear there's a table and they're going to have to go into it and navigate a table. It's a mess. That's not a way we should use tables. Two, if we are using tables within the editor in Cascade, we just need to make sure that we're indicating what row is a header row, what column is a header column, and then when we complete that and design it the way we should, we should be all set. Everything is in that content editor in Cascade to be able to do all this stuff. I would say, some of those things that we caught in here with like the drop down menu with the links or the carousel that wasn't accessible, that's probably not stuff that most of you will be doing. I don't know. I think that we're using templates that are made accessibly for that. It's more about the content that we're putting in that we need to make sure is accessible. Is that correct, Jill?
That is correct. And also the having the headers on tables is a little tricky. It's a little extra step within Cascade. So in next week's mug tip of the week, I'll do screenshots and show how to do that, to how to create headers. So they give you like the nice purple column and row thing.
Perfect. Let me just ask this, was that helpful to hear kind of how a screen reader navigates these things, to get an opportunity to listen to that a little bit? I mean, I'm sure you've heard of screen readers, but that gives you a little bit more. That is also, I will tell you, if you go to, if you Google Jaws and Freedom, if you Google Jaws, you're going to get a bunch of stuff about the movie, but if you do Jaws and Freedom Scientific, you can download that 40-minute demo. So if you ever want to run through your site and listen to it with the screen reader, that will allow you to do that. You can listen to everything just by hitting tab, and it'll go through every chunk of that. That's the very basic way to use that. But then, if you Google Jaws keyboard commands, you'll get pages of various keyboard commands to be able to do kind of what I have been pulling up there and showing you as well. So I just want to quickly go through this, some things about these 7 skills. I think I probably hit a lot of this already, but I want to make sure that that if there was something I put in here that needed to be said, that I'm getting that as well. So give me 1 second and I will pull this up. Okay. So again, a lot of people, content editing is not that probably, these 7 skills are the things you really need to be to make sure you're putting in accessible content into websites, into documents, into whatever you happen to be working on. Again, it's alt text, links, headings, lists, tables, color contrast, video and audio. With alt text, I think we touched on this already. What it does, it provides that text description for all images, graphs, and charts. So graphs and charts need to be that way too. If you're putting a graph or a chart up there, you need to provide alt text that explains what's going on in there. If you have a chart, you don't have to necessarily put everything into that alt text that's on that chart, but explain kind of what the main point of that chart is. If there's information that if you need all the information from that chart, if a user needs all the information from that chart, you might want it. You're probably gonna have to write a description in a document or on the page and link it to that chart, and just kind of indicate in the alt text full description in the body of the text or something along those lines. But we don't want to put, you know, mounds and mounds of text in that alt text. You had a chart that showed everything. Like if I put in a chart that showed ANU students from 7 years ago to today, my alt text on that would be chart showing the growth of ANU from ANU's growth from 2016 to 2022 started at 900, went to 1800. I don't have to put every little thing in there, but I'm showing what the gist of that is, that it, or saying ANU's growth has nearly doubled over 7 years, something along those lines. But if I wanted them to know every single bullet or dot data point on that chart, then I would write that out in another descriptive way in a document that I link to it, or in the text itself. We talked about decorative images. Again, explain what's necessary, clear and concise. Don't use the words image, picture, or photo of in the alt text. That's where we go from there. So again, if you put text in, or if you put an image into your website, this is what you're going to get when you're putting it in there. You're going to get the image. There's your opportunity to plug in the alt text right underneath it. And again, this is like here we'd say students using laptops in a study group, because I think that's what it's trying to get across there. We don't need to say 5 male students, 1 female student, 3 of the males are wearing blue or gray shirts, 1's wearing a red shirt. That's all aspects of that image, but it's not important to what's happening in here. I was once doing one of these presentations with a blind guy, and we had we put up images and asked people to do alt text of them. And I think the image was like a professor writing equations on the board. The first person that started giving their thing was a white male professor, probably in his mid-50s, with gray hair and a white lab coat, writing in blue chalk. And the guy goes, hang on a second. I don't want all that information. Like, what's the important thing? That's a waste of my time to listen to all of that. I want to know professor writing math equation on the chalkboard. So that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it ever since then, was making sure we're being concise.
Jim, Liza had a question
Yeah.
About the graphic. If you had a graphic with information, but included in the info and the text as well, would it be acceptable to mark the image as decorative?
I wouldn't mark it as decorative. I would say what the name of it was and say description in the text.
Does that answer your question, Liza?
Absolutely. Sorry, I couldn't get to the unmute button,
No
but that's
problem.
sort of what I figured. I just wanted
Yeah.
to be sure I was on the right path.
Decorative images are strictly for like lines, if a logo,
Literally purely decorative.
yes, purely decorative stuff. It's
Cool.
fairly
I've had that
rare.
come up before where I was like, I know I should include all of this text in the alt text, but how do I name that there's like just a header on this page that is made to be pretty, but like all of the information in the header is in the actual non-image header.
Yeah, then that sounds like it's decorative at that point.
But yes, okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Hyperlinks, I think we covered this pretty well. We want to make sure they're meaningful. We don't want to do things like, we don't want to repeat them either. We want to make sure they're unique on the page. we probably don't want to hyperlink something that goes to the same link constantly on a page either. And we don't want to use more info, click here, read. We don't want to use those things as hyperlinks either, because we saw what it pulls, that how it can pull that list and go through it for somebody in a screen reader. So you can see on here's just an example of doing that properly. You can see that, you know, we list, if this pulled up a list of links, it would say Northwestern's digital accessibility policy, accessible purchasing process and matrix, product usage and accessibility questions. Although I guess I have purchasing accessibility matrix on here twice. I probably don't need to do that. But you know exactly where these are going when you're a user and you're listening to what that list is. Headings, again, I think we talked about these. As long as you're thinking about use them. We don't want to, when you're putting in a heading, we want to use that heading format, which we find right here. It's under, I think it's listed under paragraph. It is the default. If we click on that, we go to formats. We want to use these. We don't want to just bold or change the font size of something. That's the most common mistake with this. If people just bold something or change the font size of words to indicate, you know, a new section, the screen reader doesn't pick that up as a heading. And so we're still at that point where a screen reader user needs to listen to the whole page to hear everything that's on there. So we want to use these heading, this formatted heading to go through and make those and list those headings in there. Now, we also, I don't think we ever need to use a heading 1. I think there's a heading 1 in there by default as like the title of the page. So we always, whatever you start with, you're going to start with the heading level 2 and then go from there when you're in here.
Actually, Jim, there's I just put it in snapshot yesterday, but basically the way it's set up now, for some reason, it reads differently than how you have it there. So maybe it's going through a different thing. When I go to formats, outside of that, it's really heading 3 through heading 6 is all we're using. Heading 1 isn't really used at all. Heading 2 is kind of default, the title of the page.
Titles defaults heading 2. Perfect.
So 3 through heading 6 are the ones that we use.
Listen to Jill's snapshot. Don't listen to that slide. That's the way we're going to use that then. We talked about lists, you know, not using custom bullet points, use the list editor feature. That's where that is in here. I think everybody's seen lists, but make sure you're doing that. And as Jill said, when you copy things over, make sure you select those things that are supposed to be in the list and hit this or take out all the dashes that came over with it. Highlight those things that are supposed to be in the list and choose, you know, either 1, 2, 3 or the bullet points, however you want to do that. Tables, again, we talked about that. Jill's going to send the thing out about how to put the header rows in there. We want simple tables as much as possible. If you start merging cells and making them across columns, but not, you know, not every 2 columns are together, then that becomes difficult for screen reader users to manage. I know sometimes we have to do it that way, but we want to keep them as simple as possible. We also don't really want to leave any empty, although that's not as big an issue. If, you know, I suppose if instead of leaving something empty, I would put, you know, not available, 0, you know, something like that, that indicates that it's not just an empty cell, but that there's nothing there for the data, but it'll tell somebody, you know, as they move through it, there's nothing there. It's not just an empty cell.
One other thing with tables, I just want to add in Cascade, if you create a table and then you hit submit, it's going to give you a little error message for accessibility. And what you need to do is, much like with an image, you need to put an alt text to that table. So you're saying this is a table, you know, you don't have to say that. You can just say, you know, rent rates for Foster Walk or something. And that's going to show up in small text at the bottom of your table. But that's, you kind of have to have that. So you can probably ignore it and go on with your work, but it'll come back and we're going to ask you to do it. So try to remember to put those in.
And where that'll come up too, I don't know if you may have noticed when I was searching for the tables, I could pull up a list of tables and it listed, you know, what the table was. That is what it'll show up in there. It'll name that table that way. for the screen reader user. This is one thing we didn't touch on too much because it's not really for a screen reader user, but we want to make sure that we're having proper color contrast on there. And there's a few things we do with that. We don't want to use color as the only cue to indicate something's different, right? Because if we have colorblind users, they're not going to be able to see that there's a change in something. So we don't want to change just the color of text to indicate something. Or in a table, we don't want to just indicate, you know, here's all the data and the winners indicated with in red. You know, that doesn't help. A colorblind user can't see that. So if we are going to emphasize it another way as well, you probably want to do like an asterisk or something along those lines. If you put an underline under different colored text to indicate that that's some change that looks like a hyperlink to somebody that's colorblind. So we don't want to get involved in that. We also want to make sure that our colors have a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio. And we can check that if we know our color numbers here. This is a good contrast checker, webaim.org/contrast checker. You can just go into that and plug in your foreground color and your background color, and it'll tell you what that ratio is. It's pretty simple to use that way. So if you have any questions on whether you think it's close, you know, I'd use it that way. The only place I've ever run into an issue with this is using like I guess in the UDL practicum that we put together this year when we were first designing it, they'd have like 1 week was in blue and they had a blue background for everything, and then they put light blue text on that, and that was a little bit too close. The color contrast wasn't great on that. But if you're putting like white text on a dark background or dark text on a light background, you're probably not going to run into too much of an issue anyway. But if you ever have a question on what that would look, that exact ratio would be, I'd go to webaim.org/contrast checker.
And this doesn't really apply to Cascade necessarily because all the colors and the fonts are set and designed by Global Marketing, so they're all accessible already. This would apply to, you know, creating a graphic for Instagram or something like that,
Sure.
a design element. So Sam will always make sure that this is, you know, taken care of for you. But if you have anything you have a question about, you can send it to us and we'll check it for you.
We run into this a lot with Canvas also, which you guys aren't doing, but you know, there's a lot of instructors that are not looking at color contrast. And then the last thing, any video you put up there should be captioned. Any audio should have a transcript. You can't necessarily, I mean, things are getting better, but you can't necessarily rely on auto-generated captions to be perfect just yet. I would still, any video that you have, you can run it through YouTube to get captions done on there, but then make sure that's in a page that you own or a YouTube account that you own, or you can run it through Panopto or Zoom, and then you can get in and you can edit those things. So, you know, that's a great student worker job, is to give them the videos and have them listen to them and go through and edit those captions. But we can't count on captions being 100% correct. Having auto-generated captions is better than nothing, but you know, if we want to be fully accessible, we got to take a look at those as well. So I gave you a few minutes left for questions here, but I know I blasted through a lot real quick, but part of what I wanted to share with this is, like, we hear digital accessibility, we hear screen readers, and it sounds overwhelming. And I guess what I want to get to is it's really not that difficult if we like what we just talked about here probably gets you 90% of the way where you need to be. These are the big things. These are the things that people are getting sued for. Not having alt text on images. That was one of the main things on that athletics lawsuit, was lack of alt text in images, lack of descriptive links. You know, those are the kinds of things that people get in trouble for. But again, I don't really want to come at this from a compliance level. I'm much more of this is the right thing to do. This makes us a more inclusive, a more usable, a more accessible digital community here. So focusing on those 7 things is going to get you, you know, a long way there. And I think, I don't know if any of you use Cite Improve or have access to Cite Improve. I know we do through Student Affairs. if you get those site improve reports, that's a great way to start to find where are these issues on my site. The
We're
other,
actually,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but we are actually going to start in winter quarter sending out reports to each of you with your site improve reports. So you'll see what's misspelled, if they're broken links, or if there are accessibility issues. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the one other thing I want to share here that I didn't have in that is we do have a Northwestern's got an accessibility website, northwestern.edu/accessibility, and on there is some trainings for yourself or any other content editors in your area. On that trainings page, the very first thing, the Canvas accessibility training course, I think everybody that goes through that uses Cascade has to take that before they get a Cascade account. But that talks about how to do some of these very basic things. That's a good place to look, a good resource to go to. As we start using Site Improve, there's some Site Improve resources on there as well. So that'll help you figure out how to do that. But yeah, that's kind of where we are. Does anybody have any questions on anything? You can always reach out to me if you have questions on any of this stuff. I'd be glad to, answer any questions people have at any time. I know it's a lot to come to one training, hear a screen reader, read a few things, have me tell you what to do on 7 different things and then leave. But yeah, we can help you on any of this stuff. And Jill's pretty well versed in this too. She's a good resource on it also. So I hope this was helpful.
Super helpful. Thank you so much, Jim. I mean, I found this to be really helpful for me a million years ago when I actually saw someone using a screen reader, and it was just an aha moment of when you're looking at your website, when you're looking at any content you're putting in, that you're looking at it from that perspective of scanning, just kind of like Jim mentioned earlier. That's what we do. That's what they do too. As a screen reader is going to scan and look for these things. So that's why it's really critical to make sure that they're accessible.
Liza, the Canvas accessibility course. No, the Canvas accessibility course is a Canvas course on developing accessible sites. If that makes sense. We're actually starting this year. We are going to, starting in the new year, we're going to be focusing on Canvas accessibility. A lot of it's pretty much the same. They have a rich content editor in there, and it's very similar to what's used in Cascade. So there's similar things to do there.
Yeah, some of their headings and formatting are a little lacking. I know that I've used tables for formatting in Canvas because there's limitations there, and so need to go undo some of that work now.
We're also working on there will be accessible Canvas templates, just like there are accessible Cascade templates that people will be able to use starting in 2023.
Awesome. This has been fabulous.
Excellent.
If you think of any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. Thank you again, Jim.
Absolutely. Anytime, Jill, I'd be glad to come back and talk to the group if there's others that want to see it too.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great
folks.
day.